I knew within the first hour of moving into our first apartment together that I had made a mistake. I was dating my mother. Not only that, I moved all the way to Alaska to be with him. There was no real escape. He had paid my way there, and I'd just begun working my new minimum wage job. He was the big shot, and there was nowhere back in Portland for me with $0 to my name. I knew I had to make it work, but it would prove no easy feat. Just like the relationship with my mom, this one was toxic as fuck. I can't really blame him for all of it either, so don't expect me to lie and paint myself like a complete victim. We victimized each other, and in very different ways. I had just left the sex industry when I met him, and he had just left a long-term relationship back in Las Vegas. He moved to Portland, and we quickly began dating. Only 4 months in, and he was offered a huge promotion, but he'd have to move to Alaska. They'd even pay for his car and belongings to be shipped there. Before I could even process that he may be leaving, he impulsively asked me to move in with him. And I foolishly said yes. I needed a new beginning, and he came along right on time to offer it. I mean, Alaska? Who gets the chance to move to Alaska without paying a dime? So I said yes. This would be his second time living in Alaska, as his family lived there when he was in high school. So he already had some connections. Instead of trying to find an apartment immediately, a close friend of his offered to let us crash in her living room while we searched. He moved up 2 whole weeks before I followed. We spent 2 months in that living room before we moved into our own unit in the same building. As I said, on day 1, I was asking myself, what a mess I'd gotten myself in. I didn't feel like I was cohabiting with a lover. It was like living with a guardian, an extremely messy and bossy guardian. I was the domestic one doing almost all of the laundry and cooking. Suddenly, I felt like his servant, and my libido could not be switched on. We went for months without sex before he finally blew up at me about it. He didn't really have a concept of what dating a person who's experienced sexual trauma was like. Not that he didn't try, he did, but he couldn't stop himself from getting upset in times I felt super asexual. He didn't realize that his anger and pressure were only adding to my trauma. There were even times when he'd say things along the lines of, "I don't know why I have to suffer because of someone else's mistake." It was hard to swallow those words, and again I go back to disconnecting in order to let him use my body so he'd get off my back. It seemed simpler at the time. In order to cope with my feelings of fear and loneliness, I turned back to catfishing. I still can't explain to you why catfishing made me feel so relaxed, why it gave me such an endorphin rush. But it did. I know it revolves around not feeling very in control of my life, but why I needed to victimize others in order to feel that is still beyond me. On top of that, it was victimizing him. He felt like he wasn't enough. How could I spend so much time behind his back catfishing other guys, but couldn't remotely feel sexual with him? The angrier I got, the more I needed the catfish. It was almost like we were addicted to the toxic mess that was our relationship, or that we both had this belief that we were meant to be together. Whatever it was, the more animosity festered, the more codependent we became. Simultaneously, he was beginning to lose his status as a biologist, and I was taking on the promotions. He was eventually pushed out of the position that took us to Alaska, and we had to head back to Portland, this time with me being the breadwinner. We lived with his mom, and for the first few months, it felt like living under totalitarian rule. His mom was a recovering addict, so he forbid me from even having weed near the house, and told me I wasn't allowed to smoke it while out with friends either. That I was too reliant on weed and we needed to support his mom. That didn't work. After getting caught with green twice, it became customary for me to hop off the bus to meet Hildy and get a few hits in before getting on the next bus home. I could always blame traffic since it took almost 2 hours for me to commute. After we left his mom's house, we lived for a short spell with one of my coworkers until we found a room in a house that was more our style. I think that we fought the very first night in the new house. Who knows what about? Probably sex? I'm sure all 5 of our new roommates could hear every word being yelled. He used to sneak through my phone while I slept until he found something he could be mad about. We hadn't found a safe place for us to thrive. We found a space where we made others feel uncomfortable. He was always so assured that what he felt was 100% right, and I was accused of making my feelings a priority and not thinking about him enough. He said this once after I walked a mile in the cold while I was sick to get him cigarettes because he forgot to get some himself. He was too tired to go back and get them, and I wasn't going to risk him being even more passive-aggressive towards me because he couldn't get his neck fix. I began to believe him, that I was thinking of myself too much and not enough about him. So, I continued to catfish. K8e, who we met the day we moved into the house, felt my plight. She ended up moving in with us into a 2-bedroom apartment. And in an even smaller space, our tempers couldn't be contained. K8e observed almost every fight, whether she wanted to or not. She had been in abusive relationships, and while we weren't violent, the sound of men yelling in general was traumatic to live with for her. One day, she and I were talking, and when she looked at me and said, "Fuck him, Lucas. One day he'll be gone, and it will just be you and me. You'll see." She proved to be right. My gut feeling that first day in our apartment together never really left the entire relationship. For years, I knew we couldn't last forever with how he continued to fuel disgusting behaviors. He fell in love with someone else and moved out one day while I was at work. He took the dog and left me the cat. Suddenly, the atmosphere at home felt stable. K8e and I didn't fight. We laughed way more often. Plus, the cat wasn't a bitch to everyone she met like the dog was. Actually, quite the opposite. While my heart was still shattered, my soul was slowly being duct-taped back together. He and I eventually found closure and forgiveness. We each know what we did, and we're both big enough people to take accountability. We spent years traumatizing each other, but it helped us grow. We're friendly now and even hang out from time to time. He's functioning in a healthier relationship now, not with the guy he left me for, and I'm happily single with no plans of settling down. I'm still learning to love myself more and more, and I know I'm a good fit for me, so I'm in no hurry for commitment. K8e and I are still roommates. We formed a familial bond that's safe and full of love and acceptance. Just like all of my friendships are now, encouraging. I can't be a victim anymore, and I refuse to be the perpetrator like I was either. I just want to be me, outside of my mother's shadow and my ex's grasp. Free to breathe, free to exist, free to do whatever the fuck I want. But most importantly, I'm free from who I once was. And freedom is as sweet as a sugar cookie.